Yeah.
All right, obviously the finality of spring game, we had a great breakfast this morning with the football team, and just with all the families there. Again, one of my favorite days, just to see all the moms, dads, uncles, grandmas, whatever it may be, and again, it's a special time. Brings the football team together. Had a chance to get all the players that are new, all the newcomers that came in January, to introduce themselves as well. So that started the day off, which was great. Our kids were fired up. Everybody got up there was talking about the blue win or gold winning, and so there was a lot of enthusiasm for the game. I think the kids went out and had fun. Never as clean as you want it to be, but I think when you split the teams up like you do, sometimes you're going to get that. But there were some good things. There was some drop passes that we got to make that you like to see. It comes down to the blue winning, but we got 2 missed field goals on the goal team, which we would have been at 2 minutes to win the game at the end, as opposed to we went and kicked that last field goal. So James didn't play great today like he has, but maybe he got nervous. Everything that's a first for him in Power 4 has kind of been the same thing. So I bet you if we had a second spring game, he'd have been all right. Carpenter kicked it well and gave them a chance to win the football game. Questions?
Were you happy with just how the whole FUD thing worked today?
I'd have to watch the tape. I think I gave one unsportsmanlike. I know some of the running backs and the receivers weren't happy. Coach, it's FUD. But there's some of the FUD that I was mad at the defense. So I was screaming at the defensive guys to make sure that this is not 2 hand tags. So there's that in between. I was happy they didn't tackle Kyle Lewis on the one. They said no one thudded him up. I'm like, get out of here. Jay Moore had him, but was smart enough not to tackle Kyle Lewis. But how about Kyle Lewis with it? He was supposed to run it, by the way. So he was supposed to run it, and they were going to come back and run a toss pass. But he's like, it was open, I had to throw it. So he said, Coach, players make plays, and that's a fact.
What'd you make of the day Eli had today? What'd you see on those 2 interceptions?
It was solid. The first interception he threw on an RPO, he should have handed it off. I think we had a big hole in there. If you guys go back and watch that video, but he was solid. I think he finished better than he started, but he was solid, and I think he was good.
Is that a good reflection of what you've seen so far this spring, or was it different than what you've seen all spring?
The whole, again, it's that FUD scrimmage, so it's different than what I've seen, but. I think when you get into a spring game like that, our guys are, they played smart today, so we didn't go live, we didn't tackle anybody. I'm sure there'd been a lot more yards had we done that. In fact, there was another pass that the officials called dead. I don't know if anybody tackled him. I forget who it was. Across the middle, going towards the scoreboard. But it was a solid day. Again, the main thing is we came out healthy because we couldn't afford any more injuries.
Pat, how about Mason's first opportunity in that environment?
He's a good football player. I mean, he's just got a little swagger to him, and he threw the ball well. Had a nice RPO. You saw Blue could run. Number 81. Might have to change his number here at the end of fall camp. He wants a single digit. If he keeps playing like that, he'll get one.
What about Shadarian Harrison and Kenny Johnson made it the most improved players this spring?
Yeah, I'll start with Drip. He has 2 picks out there. The most impressive thing about him is he missed a lot of reps with that that injury he had. But the way he fought in the offseason to get better at everything, and the guy must have been watching tape on his own, because he came out in spring ball and just knew what he was doing. In the knowledge of just going out there and playing that position at corner that he does, he had a heck of a day. I know it was an underthrown ball on the deep ball, and Eli didn't step into that one like he needs to. Get worried about the pass rush a little bit, but it wasn't a great pass, but it was a great catch by him. We've seen DBs not make plays on the ball. Drip, he's got ball skills, so I'm happy for him. But it really was down to his knowledge. It was just shocking. We've had other guys come back, and it's like Groundhog Day. It's like they got to start all over again. He picked up like he had a lot of snaps. We know he played well in special teams at the end of the year, but to come out and play defense like he did. Then Kenny Johnson, he had a couple drops today. He was one of the guys mad at FUD. Because he got, one of those, balls broken up. I told him, I think he thought it was Wiz instead of FUD, but, DBs are going to go make a play on the ball, and, he's got to be prepared for that. But Kenny's been, outstanding all spring. He is a different receiver than he was last year. Just the details to his route running is probably the main thing. Just the detail in route running and understand how to stack receivers and get open. He's gotten a lot better at that wide receiver spot.
What can you say about Turner and Cook, since you guys are so thin at running back?
Yeah, I mean, we've been riding low, you know, with you know, Dez being a guy that didn't finish it up in the spring, but, you know, Turner's been outstanding all spring, and Justin Cook is a football player. He hasn't played much running back in his career, but we knew we were short going into camp, and so when he got here, we just moved him running back right away, because we thought just going through winter workouts, watching him run, you know, and again, you talk about the durability, those guys took a majority, even when Dez was healthy, we didn't give him a lot of reps. You know, we've seen Dez run already, so in practice, Desmond Reed did get a lot of snaps, so Justin Reed, I just talked, you know, and him and Boosie, just war daddies as far as just, you know, those guys getting, you know, hit every play. I mean, by 2 or 3 guys on, you know, on defense. So, you know, I love their toughness, and both of them can make plays with the ball. So I'm impressed with both of those guys.
Is Derek Davis still part of the equation?
He is. I mean, he's recovering. You know, he had a pretty significant knee injury, so he's going to be a while. Jerry, I'll answer that injury question for you. But you know, he didn't take any snaps this spring. It's going to be a while. I don't think he'll be ready for August camp.
Did you get what you wanted out of that gold offensive line? Since you kept the first team or something out?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did you get what you wanted out of that gold offensive line?
I think so. Again, you watch the tape and see, you know, we'll look at it, but I think it was solid. I think the protection was decent today. You know, I'm getting yelled at all the time. I got a sack. There was times where, you know, these guys, the word sacks. They're not going to tackle. They're not going to tackle better. I can tell you that for sure. But I thought the offense line overall, 15 days spring, you know, we're better.
Pat, it felt like a majority of your young guys making those plays, and maybe not necessarily high on the depth chart just because of the injuries come August. But what does that say about the future with so many of those young guys just popping off?
You know, again, young guys coming out in the first spring game, you know, TK had a drop pass that was, you know, could have been a big time play for him, and he hasn't dropped a pass all spring, you know. But sometimes you see that when the lights come on in the stadium, and Cameron Sapp had a nice day. And again, then you watch Bryce Yates, all 3 of those guys, those young, you know, 3 freshmen. It was good to see, you know, Bryce Yates, his mom and dad were here today. They came to one of the first scrimmages and he didn't get a catch. So it was good to see him catch balls, because he's really played well as well. So, you know, I mentioned him, I think Thursday afternoon, Friday, whatever day that was, we talked. It was good to see Bryce Yates make some plays, and I think he caught everything. You know, TK had a drop, which he hasn't dropped many passes. So, but all those guys will be, you know, fighting for playing time in the fall.
Pat, how did that blue defensive line kind of impact what that starting O-line could do?
Yeah, it's hard to see out there, Jeff, to be honest with you. You know, we'll see, but you know, there were some times we just got to get the throw, put the throw in there, and put it on the money. But I thought it was solid. And again, the defense was really split up as well. I mean, the offensive line should have had the advantage with the 1s and the 2s, but with the D lines being split up, maybe we didn't see as much. But you know, I think it was solid versus the run game for the most part. But I was happy with them.
How did your perspective on the quarterback room change this spring from what you saw out of Mason and Julian?
You know, I mean, the depth, you know, this spring, I mean, we have 3 guys that we think we can win a football game with. I mean, all 3 of those guys, and for Mason to come in as a true freshman and play like he has is impressive. You know, we've talked about Julian all spring ball, about how much, you know, improvement he's made. We didn't really get to see him run the ball today based on the play calling with Julian, but, you know, he can really run the ball. I don't know if he threw it particularly well today, but he's throwing it a lot better than he is, so we got a lot of faith in all 3 of those guys.
When we talked to Cade Bell the other day, he said last spring he brought up contrast when you guys had a lot more quarterbacks, and he said he likes it this spring that since there's fewer quarterbacks, all those guys got a bunch of reps. Are you happy with having the fewer, like 4 quarterbacks now instead of having like however many you had last year?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the plan, or we'd have taken a quarterback in the portal as we came, you know, out of the season last year. So that was our goal. We thought we had 3 pretty good ones. It's like, let's invest, you know, these spring reps in those guys, and then we'll see where we are. But you feel a lot better, you know, that even if you didn't want to take one, David Lynch is a good football player. You can see him come in there and operate, which we've had a lot of trust in him as well. He had a pretty good day too. But you know, we feel good about that quarterback room, and we'll just see if we can get the right guy that we like, or we'll ride like we are.
Will there be any areas you address in the portal for the spring?
You know, we'll look at the depth chart after spring, you know, see how things go, and adjust it that way.